Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. On September 9th, Republicans and interested independents will choose the GOP nominee for governor in November. And it'll be one of the two gentlemen joining me this morning for a little roundtable conversation. Charlie Baker, you'll recognize. He's a former state government official and healthcare executive who was the party's gubernatorial nominee 4 years ago. And also joining us, the other candidate is Mark Fisher, owner of an Auburn metal manufacturing company, making his first run for political office. Charlie, Mark, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for joining me. Good morning. So elections are about choices, and it's every candidate's goal, my experience tells me, to be able to define that choice, preferably on TV if they can. So here's your chance, and we'll start in alphabetical order with you, Mr. Baker. Take 45 seconds and explain what makes you a better choice than your opponent to be the party nominee.
Well, I think my big message to voters throughout the course of this campaign, John, has been that I have the experience as a former local official and as a cabinet official in the Weldon-Cellucci administration, somebody who turned around a broken health plan and made it the #1 plan in the country for 7 years in a row for member satisfaction and customer service. And I have a vision, and I've talked a lot about what I want to do to improve our economy, how I want to make our schools great, and how I want to make sure every community in Massachusetts is a great place. And I think that combination, public sector experience, private sector experience, and a vision and a set of plans on how to make Massachusetts a terrific place for everybody who lives here, that's what voters are looking for.
Mark, 45 seconds. What's the difference here?
Thank you, John. I'm a full platform conservative Republican and not afraid to say so. I've taken stands on a number of issues. They're posted on my website. I've been out there leading on issues. I've advocated and rallied for the freedom of Justina Pelletier and the same thing against illegal immigration. Charlie, sadly, has sided with Governor Deval Patrick on those two issues. I've been out leading. I've been at 6 different forums with the Democrats and the independents talking about issues regarding criminal justice and education, immigration as well. And Charlie's decided to be a no-show at those forums. You know, in order to lead, you have to confront these issues and provide solutions. I've done that, and I can do in Massachusetts what Governor Scott Walker has done in Wisconsin.
Rebuttal.
I think one of the things that I clearly bring to this table is a track record. And I served in the Weldon-Cellucci administration where we cut taxes 27 times, we balanced every budget, we turned $1 billion deficit into $1 billion surplus. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts succeeded. We added 500,000 new jobs to our economy in that 10-year period. Since 2000, Massachusetts' economy has basically been flat. I think the thing voters want more than anything is people who can bring real-life experience, a sort of been there, done that to this process, and can be independent from the gang on Beacon Hill. And I think clearly I have the combination of experience and independence that people are looking for.
A response?
John, I would say, Charlie, apply that track record to current issues. Justina Pelletier, you were a no-show there. And with regard to illegal immigration, you've taken Deval Patrick's stance on that. I take a different stance, a different solution.
Do you want to respond to that? It's up to you.
Well, I like many other people, urged the governor to be aggressive about returning Justina to Connecticut. And that was a terrible story on so many levels, and I say that as the father of 3. And I was glad to see that she finally did get home where she belonged. And as far as the immigration piece is concerned, my position all along was I thought states ought to be willing, because of the humanity issue associated with this involving children, to at least be willing to hear the feds out on this. And my position all along was I didn't want Massachusetts to become a steward. I didn't want Massachusetts to become a financier of this program. But if the feds actually wanted to propose something to the Commonwealth of Mass, I thought Massachusetts should be willing to listen. In the end, the feds had no plan, and as a result, there's no movement on this, which I think is probably the best answer.
Equal time?
This is not a compassion issue. We're all compassionate. This is a capacity issue. Talking about listening, let's listen to our mayors of our cities and towns. Judy Kennedy up in Lynn, and the mayor of North Adams, who says they're on the verge of becoming Detroit. The current level of illegal immigrants, over 200,000, is making our cities and towns dysfunctional. Enough is enough.
I'm actually the only guy in this race who's proposed that local aid should travel up along with state tax revenue. Cities and towns have been cut by about $500 million over the course of the past 7 years, which has splashed all over everybody in terms of higher property taxes, more fees, and a lot fewer services at the local level. There's only one candidate in this race, who, by the way, is a former local official, who's proposed the idea that if state tax revenue goes up, cities and towns should benefit from that. And I think that's one of the major ways we can go about restoring some faith between the Commonwealth's local communities and state government. And by the way, I've also said no unfunded mandates. You add the unfunded mandates to some of the other issues that cities and towns are dealing with, and you're probably talking about more like an $800 or $900 million cut to them.
Go ahead.
I'm talking about increasing local aid 20 times what Charlie's talking about, and that's by eliminating the $2 billion that we spend on the 200,000 illegal immigrants in this state. Take that $2 billion every year, divide it by the 351 cities and towns in the state, that's over $5 million in local aid. That's a no-brainer. Tea Party governor up in Maine, Governor LePage, is starting to do the same thing. I'll do that here in Massachusetts as well.
Final word on this before I move on? Either one? All right, let's continue. You mentioned the Tea Party. Is the Tea Party and its advocacy on issues good or bad for the Republican Party here, Mr. Fisher? 45 seconds.
I don't think the Republican Party in Massachusetts can win without the Tea Party. It's the spirit. It's the same spirit that the market basket employees are using against the establishment of a private business. The Tea Party is using against the establishment of political parties and against the government. It's a good thing. I don't think the Republican Party in Massachusetts can win without that spirit and without the Tea Party members.
Mr. Baker.
Well, I've been traveling around the Commonwealth for the better part of the past 9 months. In fact, I actually took a leave from my day job to concentrate 100% on my campaign. And I talk to voters of all stripes as I travel the Commonwealth. I mean, I'm running, as I said before, to get 100% of the vote. And I talk to people who are Tea Party members. I talk to people who are local officials. I talk to teachers. I talk to small business people. And what I hear from all of the people I talk to is that one-party government, one-party rule on Beacon Hill is not delivering for the people of Massachusetts. 5 tax increases in the past 7 years. No significant welfare reform, the tragedies at DCF, the compounding pharmacy. I mean, the list goes on and on here, John, and what I'm interested in is making sure that the voters of Massachusetts, whatever your walk in life is,
Okay.
Charlie Baker's got the right answers for you.
Response.
Charlie said he's out to get 100% of the vote. He's trying to please all the people all the time. That is so against the wisdom of Lincoln. That's why he takes nuanced stands on things. I'm not afraid of controversy. I'm not afraid of taking a stand. That's what leaders do. I'm out to get the majority of the vote, not 100% of the vote.
As somebody who's actually been in the public sector, Mark, and has had to deal with the fact that this is a democracy and that sometimes you don't get 100% of what you want, I know how to get stuff done. I mean, Bill Weld and Paul Cellucci, we cut taxes 27 times. 27 times we got a Democratic legislature to stand up and vote to cut taxes alongside with us. Part of the great thing about having been in this business for a while is I actually know how to make things happen. And I think what people really want out of their next governor is somebody who can actually get stuff done.
I got to take a break, but take 15 seconds if you like, sir.
We're looking for people to vote for us. We have to take a stand on issues, not have one foot on one side and one foot on the other. I've taken a stand on the issues. They're there on my website, markfisher2014.com.
What's your website?
CharlieBaker2014.com.
Glad we got that out there. We'll take a break. We'll continue our conversation with the 2 Republican candidates for governor in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're having an interesting conversation this morning with the 2 Republican candidates for governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker and Mark Fisher. You mentioned in the last segment Governor Patrick, and obviously after 8 years, his time in office hangs over this campaign to a certain degree as an issue. By any measure, he's been a popular governor. We'll start with you, Charlie. Is there anything about Deval Patrick's stewardship of this state that you absolutely would like to continue?
Well, I certainly think that Jeff Riley, who's the person who was appointed the receiver of the Lawrence school system, I've known Jeff Riley for many years. He's what I would call sort of an urban education warrior. I would like to see him continue to do the fine work that he's doing up there. In a very short period of time, he's actually managed to take a school system that has, I think we would all agree, huge issues, and turned it back into the right direction. Their test scores have been going up, attendance has been improving, and he's really done a heck of a job. And I would absolutely want to see somebody like Jeff continue to do that. But that said, there are plenty of other places where I think we need some significant changes. And I think the biggest one right off the top of my head would be the health connector. Massachusetts had a health connector that worked. They just chased a waiver and continued to do it. We wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of people and hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars being disrupted and spent to try to fix the mess that's been created.
Mark Fisher, good and bad of the Patrick era.
I would be very hard-pressed to find something good about the Patrick era, and I'm not going to spend time doing that. But Governor Deval Patrick has called Charlie his identical twin. You know, Charlie served on Deval Patrick's transition team 8 years ago to help him get into office. I want to be on the transition team to help him out of office. You know, Charlie and Deval agree on a host of things, health care being a right, climate change, income inequality, stricter gun control, government involvement in minimum wage, illegal immigration. We don't need Deval's identical twin. We need his identical opposite, and that's me.
Rebuttal.
As a citizen of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mark, it didn't seem like that big a deal to serve on the transition team for a new governor. I think that's the sort of thing that people ought to be willing to do. I mean, campaigns, yeah, they're contests, and they're about ideas and elections. But in the end, I wanted to see Governor Patrick succeed when he got elected because fundamentally, it's about governing. With respect to whether Governor Patrick's my identical twin or not, I think anybody who watched the race 4 years ago knows I have plenty of issues and concerns about the way he's managed the Commonwealth. And I certainly have put a lot of policies and proposals out here that represent what I consider to be significant positive change for Massachusetts.
Equal time.
Once again, I'll be on the transition team, but it's not the transition team to help Deval into office, it's the transition team to help him out of office. 4 years ago, Charlie ran against Tim Cahill, and he beat Tim Cahill. The problem was he didn't run against Deval Patrick.
If you want to respond, fine. Otherwise, I'll move on. All right, gentlemen. As we were seeing in the last week, once again in Ferguson, Missouri, there's deep distrust and anger within many communities of color over perceived racial bias and mistreatment by law enforcement, and that's certainly not unknown here in Massachusetts. Let's start with, I lost track of who went first. I think it's your turn. Do you see this anger, this mistrust, this climate as a major problem in Massachusetts? And if so, what solutions would you offer as governor?
Yeah, John, make no mistake, it could very easily happen here. And I think the trigger, or some of the sources of this, are the level of poverty. In Ferguson, about a quarter of the population is below the poverty line, and probably equal majority is at or just above the poverty line. Poverty means dependency, and dependency means despondency. And any little trigger can set off what we're seeing now in Ferguson. The solution is jobs. And I've got a 4-point program to bring Massachusetts, or jobs back to Massachusetts, make it business-friendly again. When people get back onto the payroll, it only helps the person. You know, a sense of satisfaction that goes with a job being well done, but it helps their family, the neighborhood, the community. That's what we need here in Massachusetts.
Charlie Baker.
I think, I certainly think that the economy is always going to be a big issue in these kinds of conversations. But I think the other thing that we've lost a bit here in Ferguson is trust. The lack of trust that exists between public institutions and the people who live in those communities, I think, has a lot to do with what happened there. And I've talked quite a bit in this campaign, particularly when it comes to dealing with violence in certain neighborhoods and neighborhood communities, about pursuing strategies that involve local folks on the ground working in conjunction with state and city leaders to solve some of these problems and to bring these communities back. I mean, I spent a bunch of time meeting with folks who've actually taken communities that were in terrible shape 10 years ago and done the sorts of things that turn them around. If you go spend time in Fields Corner, for example, in Dorchester, you'd never recognize it from 10 years ago. Dudley Street, same thing in Boston. I mean, there are proven mechanisms and proven leaders who've demonstrated that when you work together, you can solve some of these problems, and that's what we should be doing.
Gentlemen, you can both follow up on this if you like, but first we have to take a quick break, and we'll conclude our conversation with the GOP candidates for governor in a moment here on WBZ. Welcome back. Gentlemen, we really just have a couple of minutes left here, so rather than introduce another question, then have to rush you, I'm going to just divvy the time up and have you each take a final moment. Maybe one way to shape it would be, what do you think the voters have learned from this conversation here today? And we'll start with you, Charlie Baker.
I would hope by the way, thanks for doing this, John, and thanks to your viewing audience as well. I guess what I would say is I would hope what the voters have learned is that I'm interested in getting to know them, and I've been crisscrossing the Commonwealth ever since I got into this race to do that. And what I hear is that one-party government is not working for people, that they want an executive in the governor's office who can be a check on the legislature, who will control spending, control taxes, reform government, reform welfare. But also what I've heard from people is they want somebody who can actually get stuff done and has a track record there. We have a lot of folks in public life who say all kinds of great things, but they've never run a big organization, they've never hired a team, they've never held people accountable. I've done all of those things. I've done them in the public sector, I've done them in the private sector, and what I hear when I'm talking to voters out there across the spectrum is what they want more than anything is someone who's got a proven track record and an ability to deliver, and I believe that's me.
Thank you very much. That's Charlie Baker on your ballot on September 9th. The other candidate on the ballot, Mark Fisher. Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
John, thank you. I believe in Massachusetts the Democrats own the state, but that simply means they own all the problems. And to beat them, we don't surrender and become like them. We run as Republicans and offer conservative solutions to liberal problems. If we have a track record, we have to apply it to contemporary issues today and be specific about what we're going to do. I'd ask people to visit my website. Under the Issues tab, I list at least a dozen there with specifics about how I'm going to solve the problems using the conservative principles that Governor Scott Walker has done in Wisconsin. We can do in Massachusetts what Scott Walker, conservative Republican, has done in a blue state of Wisconsin.
Mr. Fisher, thank you very much. Mr. Baker, thanks to you. Gentlemen, really appreciate you being here. And that concludes this conversation. Coming up on August 31st, the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, here in the same time slot, the three Democratic candidates for governor will make their first Boston TV appearance right here. So we hope you'll check that out. And whatever you do, don't forget to get out and vote on primary day, Tuesday, September 9th. That's it for me. Now, back to my colleagues for more WBZ News.